All right, identifying information. This is titled Pisupo Lua Afe, also known as corned beef 2000. I would write these down in both languages because we're going to call it Pisupo a lot. Artist name is Michael Tuffrey, 1994, mixed media. So right above where I wrote Pisupo on my identifying information, I also want you to write how to pronounce it. Pisupo, Pisupo, Pisupo. Okay, let's talk about the form. So what do you see? Make some observations. There's a close-up. What's the process? What's the material? What's the subject? All right, so this is made from hundreds of flattened corned beef tins. So it's made out of metal, and these are all riveted together. So that's what those little circles are. The cans themselves have pictures of cows on them. There's on your note page, you have an example of that on the bottom. The overall subject, this is a life-size freestanding sculpture of a bull. Freestanding just means it's not being supported by anything else. It is standing all on its own. This is hollow inside. And then if you contrast it to a real bull, what are some observations you can make? So since our Pisupo is made from metal, it's harsh, sharp, jagged. Those are all words we would use to describe the metal, compared to the organic, curvy softness that is a real animal. All right, context. There's going to be a lot of context. My note page has form that we just did, and then context. It's like the whole half of the page is context. All right, oh, beeping at me. So we need to know the artist is from New Zealand. There's New Zealand on our map. Pisupo is the Samoan language version of pea soup. So it means pea soup. It's just interesting, you don't need to write this, but Samoan words cannot end in a consonant. So they took pea soup and then added an O at the end. That's how they got Pisupo. All right, pea soup is important, even though this is not pea soup, this is corned beef, but pea soup is important because it was the first canned food that was introduced into the Pacific Islands by colonizers, by the West. So the term Pisupo is now a generic term used to describe the many types of canned food that are eaten in the islands, including corned beefs. Even though this is corned beef, it's called pea soup. So all tinned food is called Pisupo. So before the Pacific Islands were colonized, before Westerners found these islands and came in and brought in their goods, their food, what do you think these people on this island would have eaten? You're correct. It's fish. So that's one of his fish. All right, so context, more context. So traditional food in the Pacific Islands was fish and fruits. New Zealand actually has no native land mammals. There are some rare bats, but the land mammals there are not native to that land. So that means that this cattle was an imported good through European colonization in the 19th century. So what, right? What's the big deal? What would be a problem with canned corned beef being introduced to the Polynesian diet? What is that going to do to these people? Well, so canned food, processed food, is very high in saturated fat, salt, cholesterol. That's why we have to have cholesterol, tests, because cholesterol is bad, because it's a type of fat that clogs your arteries. So what is that going to do to people's health? This is going to cause obesity, health problems, including heart disease. That's a big one. This also creates a dependence on global trade network. Now it became a very important trade good. All right, what other effect would these cans have on the environment that wasn't a problem before their arrival? You have all these cans now, right? So now we're also creating more waste, which is directly impacting the land. So the environmental impact, this creates more waste, resulting in a disposal problem. And they're also bringing in non-native species, right? So by introducing a non-native species to the land, the cows, it puts additional pressure on the island's fragile ecology. Now they need to take care of these animals that they brought into this land. Wedding time. All right, you're going to a wedding. What do you bring? What is traditional to bring to a wedding? Have you guys been to a wedding? Well, traditionally, you would bring a gift, okay? So in Polynesian culture, this is one of our artworks that we're gonna discuss when we get to the Pacific units, and this is called hiapa or hiapo, and it is made of bark cloth. So presents are given, you don't need to write what I just said, we'll get to that later, but presents are given at important life events like this bark cloth or tapa. Tapa just means bark cloth. So this is an example of a very traditional Polynesian gift. So tapa was ceremonial displayed on special occasions such as birthdays and weddings. So what I want you to write is that traditional Pacific presents would have been tapa, like that example we just saw, food items, and money. So if you were going to go to a wedding, a Polynesian wedding, these would be typical things that you would bring. But now, so canned corned beef then replaced this. Canned corned beef became a prestigious food given as wedding, funeral, and feast gifts. It's like someone bringing spam to a wedding. Look what I brought you. So what we're going to write, this became a part of the ceremonial gift economy, which replaced the Polynesian traditions. So these imported goods, not only are they replacing traditions, they're replacing an indigenous art form, which was creating the tapa bark cloths. Also, these cans are now an icon of Pacific diet. That is, yeah. Okay, so what does all this mean, right? What is he saying? What's the meaning behind this? And there he is with his artworks. All right, so he's saying that these imported items displace the native foods, having a direct result of the effect, showing it the direct result of the effects of European colonization on Pacific people. Colonialism. So again, the definition of colonialism is going to come up a lot. The policy or practice of acquiring full or partial political control over another country, occupying it with settlers, and exploiting it economically, right? Which we saw Jane Quick-to-See Smith comment on her piece, Trade Land for White People. No, what was that called? Gifts for Trading Land for White People. It's very early in the morning here, sorry. All right, this comments on these products being harmful to the health, environment, traditions, and economy. So he's also wanting to create change, right? And by making these large and life size, he's also hoping to appeal to children so that they can see these large, anything large is going to appeal to a child. And so he's trying to also create change with these. It's commenting on the artificiality of the imported canned good compared to a real animal, right? We're eating this fake product. We need to write somewhere this is part of a series. So he's done multiple bowls, not just one. And he's also used these in multimedia performances. So we're going to watch a video where there's smoke coming out of them. There's wheels on the bottoms of the feet so they can be moved around. People are dancing with them. Okay, so this is the cans that are on the bowl. This is what the image is on the cans. So this image is used to depict the idea of New Zealand to Westerners by being on the can. So what is wrong with this picture, right? What's wrong with this image? You are then buying this good that is now coming from New Zealand, from the cows that we have planted there. And now this is the romantic idea of what New Zealand looks like. That's pretty weird, isn't it? All right, function. What would you guys say the function of the piece is? So write down the function. What do you guys think the function of the piece is? I wrote about colonialism. That was my idea of the function. All right, we're going to pause and then go to the video.
Basically, the origin of the whole project is talking about like the intensity between traditional and contemporary, and it's talking about like displaced Polynesians, and Polynesians actually growing up in the city. And then it's also talking about Polynesians that actually come or immigrated or migrated from the islands to like Australia and New Zealand. And my mum was actually part of that, my first migration. And basically, there's a whole lot of Polynesians that actually gone through the system in New Zealand, and we've gone through the education process. But we still have this intense tension between the communities. Like, for example, we're looking at Tongan and Samoa, like the tension between there, and like with the other Polynesians, like for Māori, talking about the tensions between them. And with the whole exercise of the performance piece, we're trying to use an alternative medium to communicate by bringing the dancers from Futuna, that are the French speakers. They're only about 300 kilometers off Samoa, but they speak French, but we use our old language to communicate to each other. I thought by bringing them here to Australia would like put them out on the street. This is where the street performance actually happens. And so taking them totally out of their context, out of their a safe environment, and bring them straight into a city, placed into a city in the street like in West End, and then having them perform on the street would actually react even more. So the dancers were so hyped up because the opposition group was actually taunting them to perform. So like I said, there was this invisible energy. And the bulls were sort of like the reaction between the bulls was trying to transfer their energy to the bulls by beating them up, giving them a hiding. So the audience are able to didn't know where to look because there's so much action, there's so many different layers going on. And with the bulls, it's talking about the whole desensitization, like us being brought up in the city. You know, where we go to the supermarket, you get the beef. You go to the supermarket, you get the vegetables. We don't think about where it comes from, and we take it for granted. And the whole thing about the corned beef is we've adopted as part of our culture. So we used to use fine mats, and we used to use ear tongas, like fine mats. And we've used all these Western ideas like corned beef, like the tins, they're like gold, they're like a currency. And that's what gave me the idea about corned beef, because I used to see it all of the, through weddings, funerals, parties. So it was like a festival thing, but at the same time was a way of giving another alternative gift, and we started adopting it. But the scenario behind it is I started asking my mum's parents about why the hell do we have to have bulls and the stock on the islands and Samoa. Was basically what was happening. We were doing all this deforestation. I was helping out. I was actually clearing forests up the top, and I realised what I was doing was wrong, because all that was doing was breaking up the cycle, on the islands, and the islands can't sustain livestock that's admit it, and that's what caused a lot of problems. And so we have fertilizers running into the reef, breaking up the cycle. We have the animals consuming more water than the actual humans itself on the island. So these islands can't sustain this sort of stock. So that's what got this whole idea moving again. And then I sort of looked at all the rubbish in the sea and around the villages, and they couldn't do anything with it. So I went and approached the companies about how they could actually help us out. I put it on the responsibility on the companies again, when they bring the product in to sell it, yes, but they're from a throwaway society. They don't know what to do with the corned beef tins. So that's what got me really thinking, okay, how could I make a statement without being too loud about it? An alternative way. I was looking for alternative mediums to get my messages across, not just to the older audience, but with the younger audience. And so building life-size bulls, that's what just got me started. And I was on a roll. I was just all these ideas of connotation like global trading, because Samoa was one of the main traders before. This is pre-European. One of the main trading islands, and it's still talking about the interaction between each island, how we trade using corned beef, and even the images on the corned beef set it off a whole lot of other scenarios, a lot of islands that she'd never been to, Australia or New Zealand, and then the image that you portray of New Zealand, or the beautiful landscape, or the perfectly cut grass with the perfect little cows on it, it was the romantic idea. So it was just playing off all these little scenarios, and just from there I was able to like get the message out to the kids about the recycling idea, the whole idea of like campaigning to sort of look after the environment. Like we got to think about the future, but I was doing it just to get off my conscience because I have kids myself.